Hey VJ, can you believe it's been close to 33 years since we first met? I was just starting my undergrad and you were on sabbatical. You took a chance and you hired me as a research assistant. I remember those early days, spending lots of time in the library, manually looking up periodical journals and number crunching to support your numerous financial papers that you'd write, defend, and eventually publish. A highlight at those early times was being added as a footnote to one of those published papers. At the same time, you created a small consulting firm called PC Edge. That also expanded my initiatives with working with you. I was tasked to help market to a vertical segment of grocery stores. I still don't understand or know who had the expertise of grocery stores or retail space. But that was back then when we were trying to sell ACPAC. You may not recall, but I only had you as a prof in my final year. That's probably because you were always on sabbatical. As I look back and think about the duration of your teaching years, I think more than half of that was on sabbatical. And even the years that you did teach, I recall you saying you're going to talk to the dean and ask to only teach one course, and at the master's level. In hindsight, I think that was your way of getting access to a talent pool that we would eventually feed PC Edge. So kudos to you on that. As PC Edge was a small startup with virtual employees, the common glue was the BBS. For the people that don't know what BBS is, it was like CompuServe. And if you don't know what CompuServe was, you can just Google it. But VJ and Emmy, is that the common sound that you used to hear coming from your basement all the times? Let's go find that BBS. I know this is not your basement, but take a look. We have it set up in the corner. And imagine the BBS on the state-of-the-art 386, maybe 2 megs of RAM, 20-pound cathode green screen, 20 meg hard drive, and lightning fast 2400 baud modem. That was advanced technology at the time and the backbone to PC Edge. We were excited with Moore's Law when our dial-up connection was advanced sixfold to the 14.4. VJ, remember all those hours we spent on the phone waiting for files to be exchanged? We were lucky that we both had 2 separate phone lines at the time. Just think about all the productivity we had those days, updating and sending back and forth those Lotus 123 bubble charts in preparation for transport meetings. I think that was one of the first business meetings you brought me to meet up with your friend, Mr. Henderson. When I graduated, you offered to keep me employed full-time, and that is when I ended up going to Queen Street to meet the rest of the team. The Queen Street office to me were the days of long hours, selling vaporware, and making something out of what was promised. Over time, PC Edge expanded in terms of space, people, and offerings. Looking back, our current space that we have now, as well as Preston Street, were the only times that we were all in the same floor, in the same vicinity. All the other office space that we've always had to overcome the use of sneaker net to mitigate from the stairways and the hallways. Getting back to the growth of PC Edge, Queen Street was where the creativity, teamwork, and foundation of the products began, using a technology called Foxpro. The first one, I believe, was salary management systems, when we had Labour Canada, Transport Canada, and RCMP as major clients that generate some revenue for us. That also reminds me of some of the people that have come and gone, as well as are still here. That includes Ian, Mike, Purnima, and Anant. A side story about Anant is when he's working on, most likely at that point in time was RCMP, was he and another colleague would disappear on Fridays at lunchtime and come back a couple hours later. He would have a liquid lunch, his eyes would be red, and he would just stare at his computer screen for hours. But at the end of the day, he delivered a line of code that was bug-free and resolved the problem. Yes, it was quality, not quantity. Maybe that's also why he still has a personal beer fridge in his office. Next major client is CFSA, not to be confused with a later client of CFPSA. This was another major project that did a stress test on all of us, I believe, including our customer, Peggy. The guys I remember that were working on that project were Andrew, Aaron, and Sean. Next, we made a breakthrough with FlexABM. Simultaneous equations was the answer to making FlexABM work for the service industry. This product was where you trusted me to be client-facing, working on a large deployment of Flex ABM at PWGSC. I recall working with Diane for months at the Sir Charles Tupper building. Then, with that first deployment of Flex ABM, we were able to win FCC in Regina. Something I never told you about, but when I went back to Regina to work on FCC by myself, the first night I was there, I ended up spending the night at the ER. I had a major reaction to one of my allergy shots that I had earlier in the day in Ottawa. While at Queen Street, that's where also alliances were formed that helped transform PC Edge into what it is today. KPMG was a key organization to bring us into the Great Plains world. And then Don's firm, Competitive Analysis Group, brought us closer with Jim, Patty Dalsin, Patty Robertson, and Donna, with the rest of the story being history now. It's also where Louise joined us, initially part-time, as she had another gig as an administrator with KIPS. Little did she know that 20 years later, she would be a key developer. After a few more years at Queen Street, it was time to move, and we found some great space at Preston Street. But as we moved, we also changed the name to Corporate Renaissance Group. It was also time to get onto the internet with our first website. That was developed by a couple of other Carleton grads from the commerce program, Alex and Dwayne. This was also where Changer and Reformatter were developed by Ajit, an MMS student under guidance of Vijay. So that feeder program was still working at that point in time. Note that Ajit still works with us today in some capacity. It's also the birth of another site called Investors Corner, where Bay and Wall Street meet. After some time at Preston Street and another major win for Flex and ABM at Cold Lake with Merck, it was time for me to take my sabbatical in '95. Little did I know I would end up working with Mark's wife, Virginia, for a number of years. Fast forward now to October 2003, when you and I reconnected. As you knew, I was looking for a final home after traveling across the country for work and then laid off. Timing was right, as I would be taking from John Hitzman as he was leaving, but I did not realize I'd be taking on Ev's role for the past 18 years as well. At that time, you told me it should probably take you a couple of days, a month. There's not that much coming in on the NBS side. During the past 18 years, there have been a lot of great experiences and memories. One that comes to mind was when Vijay, John, and myself took a trip to Toronto for a conference. Little did John and I know that it was going to end up being a 4-hour meeting. But a number of years later, we did it again, this time with Thomas, on a 9-hour road trip back from Boston. Just think of all the meeting notes that were scribed. The theme here is when Vijay offers to go on a road trip with you, consider it a closed meeting room on wheels. Kidding aside, the past 18 years you have trusted me to do what I want and helped CRG along this fantastic journey. From when I met you, you were on a sabbatical, writing and publishing articles. Will you be taking another sabbatical to write a paper looking back at the growth and EPC of publicly listed firms using M&A strategies that can now include CRG? Vijay, did you ever imagine that the exit strategy of your basement operations would be through an M&A? Things that you taught and wrote about. Well, Vijay, thank you for everything you have done. Here is a toast to the success of PC Edge and Corporate Renaissance Group. Cheers.